Let's move on to discuss who the primary actors are in the EU privacy ecosystem. Under the GDPR, there are three primary entities involved. At the center of this ecosystem is the data controller. This is the person or entity that determines why a particular data processing operation is being undertaken and how the operation is to be carried out. This is most often the company that you are interacting with to buy a product or service. For example, Amazon when you are buying a Christmas present. The second relevant entity is the so-called data processor, who only processes personal data on behalf of the controller and according to the controller's instructions. This could be any third party that Amazon is employing to deliver a product or service to you. For example, a data processor could be Stripe, the payment service provider used on Amazon.com to pay with your Visa card. Another example is the DHL delivery service that hands you your package. The third actor involved in this ecosystem is known as the data subject. That's you, the individual whose personal data is being processed. Let's take a look at each of these actors in closer detail. As we've said, the data controller is at the center of this privacy framework. This is due to the fact that the responsibility to fulfill the GDPR's obligations is imposed on the controller. This means that they are accountable for safeguarding your privacy rights throughout the data processing lifecycle. And so, when something goes wrong and your privacy rights are infringed, it is the controller who must bear the burden of paying a fine. In our earlier example, this is Amazon. But the controllers are not the only players in the game who collect your personal data. Some companies may not collect your information from you directly, but still process your data when instructed to do so by the controller. These companies are known as the data processors. These entities are hired by organizations to carry out specific tasks in relation to the processing of personal data. Typical examples of such companies include cloud service providers, IT support companies, and other outsourced firms hired by controllers to perform certain tasks in which they specialize. In our earlier example, this would be Stripe or DHL. And finally, there's the so-called data subject. Unlike controllers or processors, which are most often companies, the data subject is a living, breathing individual whose personal data is being processed. Provided that these individuals are identifiable, the GDPR grants data subjects specific rights and protections regarding the processing of their personal data, empowering them to have more control and transparency over how their information is used. Whether it's a customer, an employee, or an individual whose data is in question, they are considered a data subject under the GDPR. To illustrate how these entities are identified in practice, let's consider an example in the context of an online fitness app. The company which runs the fitness app decides to process personal data collected through its app, such as user profiles, workout history, and health information to personalize its service for each user. This company therefore determines why and how the data is processed, and as such is considered the data controller. The fitness app company decides to use a third-party cloud service provider to store and process user data securely. The cloud service provider in this scenario would be considered the data processor, as they handle the technical aspects of data storage and processing as instructed by the controller. Finally, the individual using the fitness app is the data subject. This user provides personal information, including fitness goals, health metrics, and workout preferences, which the controller collects and processes. Because it is their personal data being processed, the GDPR grants the data subject certain rights, for example, to access, control, and request the deletion of their personal data.